What's up, you guys? Thanks for being with me for another video. We got a very special topic that I've been dying to get into. It's been a while since I talked about the sequel trilogy. You know, we had that kind of wave of content that came out after the movies, but since then I've been just kind of doing some Clone Wars stuff and just some random things that pop up here and there. But I kind of wanted to get this video out there. As you guys all know, if you've been watching my channel, if you're new, I'll let you know. I was someone that definitely enjoyed the sequels more than most, longtime Star Wars fans. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but it's definitely not perfect. So when I had my videos like why I love The Rise of Skywalker, just why I love different movies in this trilogy, in this era, I think it is important to have a video out there to go over some of the things I did not like, because there are some things that I didn't like, and some of it to me is inexcusable, and I wish that Disney would just handle some of these things a little better, especially with just how connected the Star Wars characters are to each other and different, and all that stuff, how all the canon just meshes together really tight. I think it's really important that Star Wars takes that stuff seriously. So there was some things that I didn't like, and I'm going to go over that now. Before we get going, if you're new, be sure to subscribe. I do make a lot of Star Wars videos over here on this channel, and like this video if you're watching. But without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is probably going to be very controversial, but I'm going to talk about The Last Jedi. This is a movie that I definitely liked more than most. Coming out the theater, I think I gave it like a 7.5. It wasn't my favorite Star Wars movie, but I definitely didn't think it was nearly as bad as people were trying to make it out to be. And I still hold that true. But I hold more of that belief now more as a standalone Star Wars film. And as much as it does take things from The Force Awakens, as much as The Rise of Skywalker does, build upon things from The Last Jedi, there's still just so much about that movie that is not the story that's being told in The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, or just things that they could have done to build upon the revelations we get in The Rise of Skywalker or the things set up in The Force Awakens. I'll give you a perfect example. It's just now we know that Rey's a Palpatine, and the only scene we really get to kind of give a hint of that in The Last Jedi is when Luke's training her. She went straight from the dark. He tells her, like, we don't know what that's about, but he tells her, like, she went straight to the dark. But there's another scene where she goes and sees that Force mirror, where you would think, just like Luke on Dagobah, like, you would think she would have saw something besides just a bunch of herselves. And again, you can think of some things that they can mean for her personally, but you can't tell me now that shouldn't have shown her something else, something that she really has a dark nature to her. And if they would have done that, it would have even built upon the character we see in Rise of Skywalker more, because she's already dealing with that kind of stuff. What if it had shown her, remember that dark side Rey we end up seeing on the Death Star? What if it showed her her, like with the teeth? What if it showed her a vision of just that, and just a quick flash, like maybe it's her and just seeing good stuff and then flashes to her, just something like that to just give us like, oh, like she is dark, Finn's Force sensitivity. We noticed that he's force sensitive in The Rise of Skywalker, but in The Last Jedi they give him this whole plot that no one really liked. No one really liked the Canto Bight stuff. I didn't love it. Like, I would rather it not been there, but I didn't hate it. But it's there. It takes up a good portion of the film, but it gives us no hints that Finn's force sensitive. The Force Awakens does, The Rise of Skywalker does, but then The Last Jedi spends this much time with him, and what's supposed to be some kind of big arc for the character, like, it gives us no hint that he's force sensitive. So like that's very disappointing. Finn's already, for most people, probably the character that you had the highest hopes for, maybe pre Force Awakens or after Force Awakens, that just didn't get built upon, as much as you would want. And The Last Jedi was his moment. They could have gave us something with that force sensitivity, like just something to hint that he had it. I think that would have been great for the character. There's just so many, things that intentionally or unintentionally that it seems like The Rise of Skywalker brushed away that happened in The Last Jedi. Again, the worst scene in The Last Jedi to me is when Luke throws the saber over his shoulder. It's not the fact that he rejects training Rey. I can understand that with what he's been through, him being like, I'm not training another Jedi. But there's no way you can tell me he gets the saber and just tosses it over his shoulder, like making it a joke. Like, no, he would have handed it back to her, just like, sorry kid, like I can't do this, like I've messed up in the past, take the saber, I'm sorry they brought you here, but here it is. Like, they should have watched just how they handled certain parts of that that movie. Now again, it's not all, you know, bad. It definitely picks up some things, like again seeing, you know, Leia's little flying maneuver when she saves herself. I didn't like how they presented that to us, but you know, knowing who she's a Skywalker, she's been trained now, we know, you know, she can save herself with the Force. Like that was a good thing that they built upon. Obviously the dyad in the Force with Kylo and Rey was obviously a huge thing they built upon, but I'll get to that later. Like in The Last Jedi, we hear that, you know, Snoke says, "It was I that bridged your minds," and we know for a fact now, verbatim, that that's just not the case. Unless someone can try to explain that to me, is there any way that Snoke caused this bond between them, but also Palpatine didn't know about it? That it was created just a manifestation of the Force that makes them strong, that hadn't been seen for generations. It definitely now, and I'm in the process of reading the Rise of Skywalker novelization, it definitely seems like that line is just forgotten. Like we might as well not even think that he ever said that, which is fine. There's going to be retcons, and in my opinion, like the Rise of Skywalker turned things in a better direction for this series. Some people may disagree with that, but I like the Rise of Skywalker, so I think that it turned things, it did the best it could at what pieces were left from the Last Jedi, in my opinion. So again, I like that line there. Like he did not form that bond. Like that was just a lie. So there's just a few things in The Last Jedi that, now that we know the full story, if you were really trying to make this the best story, The Last Jedi would have definitely taken a lot of different directions and done some different things. I mean, outside of Rey and Kylo's bond, you know, maybe Kylo killing Snoke and just the Rey, you know, Luke training Rey, like everything else in that movie probably would have focused or just done a little bit differently. So again, that's the first thing I wanted to get off my chest. The next thing is just the connectivity of you know, the stories. You know, again, when I first watched The Force Awakens, I've said it before, nothing really captured my mind in Star Wars like that. Like that's when I really started to try to consume all the canon content that I could, from podcasts to novels to watching a bunch of YouTubers and things like that. You know, it really captured, you know, my imagination, and I read a bunch of stories. I read Bloodline. I read the Captain Phasma book and things that were coming out canon during this time period. And I just can't help but see that they didn't do a great job of making that worth the investment of time. So again, like Bloodline is a movie that's all about the politics going on right now, and Leia, and you know, the galaxy realizing that Darth Vader was her father. But in the sequel trilogy, we see nothing about that. We don't see Leia mentioned, like how that changed people's opinion of her. We don't see really any of those characters like come into play. You know, in the Captain Phasma book, you know, there's these characters, like they build up Phasma. They don't really do anything with her. It's just funny that they would put the time into those, you know, those books, but don't really have them play out in any way in the sequel trilogy at all. But then also, I was going to get to this later, but even I'm talking about the show Resistance. I'm so disappointed in that show because I feel like it should have brought so many stories together. Instead, it had nothing to do with the sequel trilogy. It could have had characters like Cardinal that we see in Phasma. I think is his name. You know, and again, I guess he's probably dead at this time, but just stuff with Hux, you know, like connect these stories together. Like let Leia tell someone about how people found out about Vader and how Ben found out about Vader, and just like have her talk about that. Now again, I know the Leia stuff was difficult to pull off during the trilogy, and I definitely give this trilogy a pass with anything regarding Leia, but I think they should have tried to connect the stories that they had been telling throughout the other pieces of canon, and then just involve the politics of Star Wars going on, just so people could understand. Like in The Force Awakens, they blow up Hosnian Prime, but no one really even knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going on there, who those people were. You know, they don't really explain a lot of that stuff, and that would have been good to see, because they had 3 movies to really go into that, and they really don't ever get into the politics side. What's the state of the galaxy? I don't know. That's just my opinion. I wish they would have done a better job of trying to bring a whole bunch of all the Star Wars stories that we know that are going around at this time and a little bit before it. Like bring that together, show some of that off, like within this trilogy. And again, I know you can't do everything at once, but that's where the show like Resistance was supposed to come in and kind of be a place where you could tell stories with Hux, tell stories with Phasma. You know, let us see some stuff with Finn as a stormtrooper, or you know, just him out on missions with Poe. Just you could do all kind of stuff, but that's just my. Now this last one, guys, it probably might be the longest one. It probably could be the only one when you really think about it. Everything I personally would complain about this trilogy branches off the stem of just they did not plan this out as they should. I think that they had their characters, but they did not know which way the story was going to go. And I think the proof is the things I've been talking about. But I think the show Resistance is probably like the ding, ding, ding. Like they didn't know what they were doing during this time period. They just wanted to release stories. Because when you think about a show like the Clone Wars, which does so much for the prequel era, even Rebels, like it does so much for that era, and then it also just bridges stories that are going on at that time. So much of that is going on in Clone Wars and Rebels. When you compare that to Resistance, I mean, it is non-existent. Like I am still to this day shocked by the little amount that we see characters like Finn and Poe, Hux, Kylo Ren, Rey. Like we don't see them at all. Like some of the people I mentioned we see, but not nearly enough. Like we don't see anything that adds to those characters. We don't see anything that adds to the grander story being told during this time. And again, I'm talking about the planning of this all. If you were going to make an animated series and piggyback off of Clone Wars and Rebels that have done so much for their respective trilogies, like what is even going on in Resistance? Like how could you even get that show approved given how little it adds to that trilogy? And again, we talked about the Last Jedi. When you look at The Force Awakens, was a great foundation of a story to be told. The Rise of Skywalker, to me, was a great conclusion to the story that The Force Awakens was trying to tell. With The Last Jedi, it kind of just does what it wants. It really does. It does whatever it wanted to do with whatever Force Awakens set up, and has The Rise of Skywalker come in and pick up the pieces. And again, I think given that, The Rise of Skywalker did the best job that it could. I mean, I really enjoy that movie, but that's not what this is about. I clearly see, though, there wasn't a plan or a script that Ryan had to follow. Like I really do think that he could have killed Snoke or left him alive. He could have had Rey turn to the dark side. He could have not. He could have had Rey. He could have done so many different things. I don't think that there was enough of a set story. For the directors to have to fall between, I guess. And to even think like for the Rise of Skywalker, there was supposed to be another director that was going to come in to make that, and they released all maybe the scripts or the concept art. People were like, oh, I would have enjoyed that much better. And I'm like, you probably wouldn't have, because it would have been a third director trying to come in and do probably whatever the hell he wanted to do, and it may look good on paper, but when it was probably executed, it probably would have been a mess. There wouldn't have been, like, think about the connectivity then. At least we got J.J. Abrams trying to come in and pick up the pieces where he originally started the story, which, I mean, that's probably the best thing to do, unless you would have given just one director all three films. So again, guys, it just clearly wasn't planned out as much as it should have been. Disney brought the rights to Star Wars, and I understand they quickly wanted to regain the money that they invested in, so they put out a trilogy. And again, it lands just fine for me. Like, as much as I do understand people's complaints and ways it could have been better, I wish there were more, people with lightsabers in the series, like involved in the story. I wish that it would have really built upon more of the Star Wars stories we've been told for a long time. Again, I wish it was just more planned out. And I am optimistic about the future, but for sure, they did not plan this the best way that they could. And given the nature of Star Wars, as I've been saying, all the stories are connected, the characters. Like, you can't just go and start just making stories. I don't know why they thought that you'd be able to do that in Star Wars. You can probably do that in other stuff that's not as connected, and even stuff that is connected. I think Star Wars is unique with just so many different stories and characters and bloodlines and just, things that bring the story together in different ways. It's really like one of the biggest reasons I love it. I think you just have to make sure that everything is planned out. Again, not every single thing, but at least the timeline, the plan, like the main story, be planned out. And I don't think that they did, and I think that's the number one thing that this trilogy suffers from. And I think that's just why I feel so disjointed at times, and people are just confused about what's going on. Again, Snoke tells Kylo and Rey, "It was I who bridged your mind." Well, that's not what happened. It wasn't you that bridged their mind. Like, it's a dyad in the Force, not seen for generations. Stronger than life itself, as Palpatine said. So again, that's just me. I actually want to kind of hear from you guys. I know a lot of people have a lot more to say about this trilogy than I do, as far as things that they didn't like. Again, I am a fan of this trilogy, and I'll try to make a video going over the things I liked. But you know, this is not me saying I hated it. This is just me kind of giving me a chance to voice the frustrations I did have, and things I wish they really did improve when they had the chance. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Again, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.